have a sesh on break-even analysis. Why break-even analysis is good and why break-even analysis might not be such a great thing. What are the limitations for it? Let's start with why break-even analysis is good. So break-even analysis is a useful tool for management. So you can make lots of decisions based off of it. But you must remember, break-even analysis is only giving you predictions. It's only predicting certain things. But these predictions might be useful to a business. Here are some of the predictions you could find out. Well, firstly, you could find out your break-even output because you would work out your break-even point where your total revenue intersects with your total costs, and then you would find the output level where that intersection occurs. Any confusion there, click up there on the icon on break-even output. Now, also, if you've calculated your break-even output, you could calculate your margin of safety because you might have decided that you are producing a certain amount of goods and you've worked out your break-even output so you can see the difference between what you're actually producing and what the break-even output is. And that's your margin of safety, how much safety you have before you start making a loss. Also, you could estimate profits at different outputs. So you could fiddle around with the break-even analysis and work out, well, if we made 2,000 goods, what would be our profit or loss? If we made 3,000 goods, what would be our profit or loss? And you could so forth work out. So you could kind of have predictions for the future that if you increased your output, how much profit you might make and how much more profit you might make. Also, you could fiddle around with the predictions and you could start to change the sales price. So you could try what would the break-even analysis look like if we changed the sales price? Where would the break-even output now be? Where would the margin of safety now be? And what would be the profits if you started to change the price, if you started to lower it or you started to higher it? The second point is break-even analysis highlights the importance of fixed costs and keeping your fixed costs as low as possible. So if you keep your fixed costs as low as possible, that will lead to the break-even output being less. That's a good thing. And if your break-even output is less, your margin of safety is likely to be higher. And this means that you're going to have lower risk. And lower risk is a good thing for a business. An example of this could be that you are a business on the high street and therefore you have to pay rent for your outlet, for your shop. And that rent could be high. And if that's the case, that means you've got higher fixed costs. Now, break-even analysis might say to you, your fixed costs are very high, so therefore your break-even output point is very high. So what if you were to move online, to use more e-commerce and no longer use the high street? Well, that could tell you that you now have lower fixed costs because you're not paying that rent, and that could lead to your break-even output reducing. And if your break-even output reduces, that means your margin of safety is going to be higher. So that could be based on break-even analysis. You've worked out and you've made a decision that you could, for example, move from the high street towards an e-commerce business, and it's got lots of brilliant benefits of that. This whole point I've made into a detailed video, so please click on the icon up there now and see more about that. Point number 3 is that break-even analysis, well, the data generated can be used for business plans. So you could put a break-even analysis in your business plan, and then if you're trying to get sources of finance, for example, debt or equity, in the case of debt, maybe from a bank, well, you could show them, we've done a break-even analysis and we've worked out to break even, we need X amount of units. See the graph right there. It's visual, it's easy to understand. And also, if you're going down the equity route, you could use the same chart for investors. So they're going to understand where you're going to make profits and when they're going to get their dividends. Now let's look at the limitations of break-even analysis. So break-even analysis, big problems. Based on predicted data, not actual data. That's 101. It's based on predicted data, not actual data. And number 2 is there's so many unrealistic assumptions in break-even analysis. For example, one same price is always used. So when we've done break-even charts, we've used the same price over and over again. But that's not necessarily realistic because in reality, well, you might have a marketing mix, and a marketing mix, the 4 Ps, one of the Ps, price, you have many pricing strategies. Maybe you're using price skimming, or maybe you're using price penetration. And either way, that involves prices changing over time. For example, price skimming, you're going to start with a high price and then you're going to have a low price. So how does break-even analysis deal with that? Also, it says that you have no waste. So it assumes you've had no recalls, it assumes you've had no defects. Is that realistic? Probably not. Also, it says that all units produced are sold, so there's no refunds. Is that realistic? Probably not. And on top of that, production costs stay the same is another assumption. But we know as businesses grow, they get economies of scale. So is it really accurate when you look at those total costs? Because as you grow, theoretically, you're getting economies of scale. For example, technical economies of scale or purchasing economies of scale. Only one product is sold. So this is a massive limitation with break-even analysis, is that it sort of suggests that you only make one product and you only sell one product. That's not realistic. We know many businesses have product portfolios, so they have a range of products that they sell. How could break-even analysis deal with this? So break-even analysis is quite useful, but lots of massive assumptions that it's based on, and they're not necessarily realistic. So what really does the break-even tell us? This question, very likely to be a recommend or an advise question. And for that, you need to think about this in your judgment. So it depends on the accuracy of the predicted data. You've got to question the predicted data, likely in the case study, how accurate is it? And are there lots of problems with it? For example, these. You could also think about that predicted data. I mean, is the price likely to change? Are they using a couple of prices? Number two, are the variable costs likely to change? Maybe it's a delivery firm and they're using petrol. Petrol prices change all the time, so your variable costs would keep changing. So that would change the total costs, and because the total cost has changed, it changes the break-even point, and because the break-even point has changed, it changes the break-even output, and because the break-even output has changed, it will change the margin of safety. So it can have all these knock-on effects. All big things to consider for a very likely question on break-even analysis. Remember, I've got other videos on break-even analysis. Please click on the icons, check the icons that came up earlier. And if you like these videos, don't forget to subscribe. Click right there now. Thank you very much. And go out there and smash your exams.